almost all of us here, we've all stood and given individual stories about people who are struggling. I remember, sadly, 12 months ago, from the pre-budget consultation, standing in this very spot, talking about this very budget, and saying the story, telling the story of Jennifer from Ottawa. Everybody here, her name is in Hansard. She presented in a public presentation to us, and she told us that when she gets up in the morning, that the first thing she does is turn her heat off until noon. She turns it on again until 3 o'clock. She gets 3 hours of heat and then shuts it off again until that evening when the rates go down, because she has to choose between whether to heat or eat. That's the story Jennifer told us. That's a real person with a real story and real troubles in Ontario. A year has passed, and this government has done nothing for the Jennifers of the world. Nothing, Speaker. Nothing. In fact, you're absolutely correct. They made it worse. And January was one of the worst months we saw with the double whammy. So, Speaker, under this Premier and this Liberal government, Ontario's hydro rates were made unaffordable for families, seniors, and they've made it uncompetitive for business. I think I told you the story a time or two about with a member from Chatham area, and we toured a greenhouse, and it was the first time I was ever in a greenhouse. It was exciting to see, and you just see all the people that were working there and the jobs that were created, and it was kind of wonderful to see. It was exciting. And the owner was telling us of his plans to double the size of his greenhouse and hire 100 more people. I was just buoyed by that thought. And a couple of years went by, and there was a reception downstairs in Queen's Park just this past fall, and I saw him again, and I hadn't seen him for a couple of years, and I said to him, Peter, did you ever build that greenhouse? And he said, yes, Vic, I spent $100 million and built that greenhouse, and I put 100 people to work, and I was beaming for him. I was so happy, so proud of him. And he said, but the sad news, Vic, is I built it in Ohio. I cannot afford the energy rates in Ontario. So he took his $100 million investment across the border into Ohio and hired 100 people there and built a greenhouse there. And then he told me his good friend and competitor, who has a similar greenhouse to his in Chatham, went to Pennsylvania and built his $100 million down there. I know you don't like to hear the facts, but, you know, we lost 2,700 fewer businesses. 2,700 businesses did what he did and crossed the border, because our hydro rate is the most expensive hydro in North America, and deniers. The government has no credible plan to address Ontario's unaffordable hydro rates. Speaker, let me repeat myself. We have the highest energy rates in North America, and energy rates are scheduled to rise. Rise, Speaker. What did this government do in the budget? They gave us a break on energy. $2 a month you are going to get back under the cap and trade. So they're using $2 a month. That is insulting to the Jennifers of the world and to all the families in Ontario who have to choose between whether to heat or eat. So they're all wrong, according to this government. They are all wrong, and it's, according to the finance minister, it's a fiscal fantasy to want affordable hydro in the province of Ontario. And all of this, by the way, is because of the government's waste, mismanagement, and scandal that life got more expensive in a province of Ontario for families and for businesses. Do you know, Speaker, that since this government was elected, hydro costs have increased by more than $1,000 per year on the average family, and an additional 42% increase is expected between 2013 and 2018. That's the reality, Speaker. I don't hear anybody denying that today. That's interesting, Speaker. That's very interesting, Speaker, that not one of them has any kind of a response to that, because those are factual, right, Speaker? Every time this government makes a decision...
Okay. The fact that the government members aren't heckling is really no indication of whether or not they agree, because I would hope that they will not heckle you, because you have the floor and I need to hear you. So the member for Nipissing has the floor. I would ask the members to listen to his comments and give him the respect that he deserves as a member of the legislature. Member for Nipissing.
Thank you very much. Again, Speaker, let's look at the reasons why. Waste, mismanagement, and scandal. Those are the three reasons why our hydro rates are the highest in North America. In this... Oh, I thought... Okay. What's worse, though, Speaker, is the government is moving full steam ahead with the sale of Hydro One, with no assurance that the fire sale of Hydro One will not result in even more rate increases for ratepayers. The public does not support the fire sale. The experts say this is not a good deal for the province of Ontario, yet the government here, the Liberal government, under Kathleen Wynne, are not acting in the best interest of the people of Ontario. They are looking for any way to raise revenue, any way, Speaker, to raise revenues to mask over the deficit that they, and they alone, have created here in the province of Ontario. So let's talk about the increase in hospital spending that we heard about this weekend. Again, there's nothing in this budget, Speaker, that doesn't give in one hand and take away on the other. That's always the way it is with this government. They're not looking out for the people of Ontario. They're only looking out for their political survival. So obviously, we're pleased to see that the government, after 4 years of frozen hospital budgets, has finally made an investment, albeit small, in Ontario hospitals. So, again, the details are never discussed by this government. They like to give you the good news, the aspiration, without the bad news, the actual operation of these things. So, while they claim hospital funding will increase by $345 million, what they forgot to tell you, Speaker, in the legislature in that speech was, oh yeah, by the way, the gaming revenue that OLG has given to hospitals annually, $107 million. By the way, that's being clawed back. You don't get that any further. So that means the hospital funding increase is really only $238 million. And then, Speaker, if you remove from that the parking fees, now we're down to a number, Speaker, that is in the $100 million plus, not the $300 million plus that the government announced. That's, again, as I said earlier, it's those little buzzwords. You've got to watch for those, Speaker, when it comes to anything this government says. It's those little buzzwords where they don't tell you the whole story. It's always about deny, delete, delay. That's what this budget, that's what this government is all about. So, Speaker, we continue to see this government. They claim to do one thing, but they end up doing another. Speaker, the reality is the government's ongoing cuts continue to hurt patients. So I'm going to take a moment here, Speaker, because I want to talk about North Bay, my hometown, and what this has done to our city and what it's done to the economy of the city. Speaker, we've had 350 cuts to our hospital in North Bay, including 100 nurses who have been fired. That's the reality, Speaker. That's what has happened in the last 3 years. Last year, we had 158. 158 people in our frontline healthcare lost their jobs, including nurses. So we can talk about what that's done in the hospital, but I just first want to talk about what that's done in the economy. Because if you look back at November, December last year in North Bay, where we had the university was on strike, Ontario Northland, the government-owned, I almost said Transportation and Communications Agency, but they got rid of the communications side of it, so the government-owned transportation business was locked out, and the hospital had massive firings. As a result of that, well, maybe you don't think massive is 158 is massive, but I do, and the people in the city of North Bay think 158 is massive. So we had massive firings in the city of North Bay, and that has meant car dealerships suffered because there was so much uncertainty. Am I sitting, Speaker? There was so much uncertainty in the local economy because of these government insertions in our economy that houses weren't selling, car dealers were struggling, retail stores were closing. Nobody wanted to go out and buy a new house. They just didn't know what the future had in store for them. Nobody could afford to buy a car not knowing if they were going to get their job back or if they were next on the list to be fired. So it really adversely affected our economy. So when we see this frozen budget and the increase that hardly accounts for the average rate of growth of hospitals, which is between 4 and 6%, this is basically another cut, Speaker, that the people in my town aren't ready to hear. I told this story once before. I was visiting my friends Joe and Jan in the hospital. One of them was a patient. And we were talking about the closed beds, 60 closed beds at a brand new hospital. This is this multi-million dollar, multi-hundred million dollar hospital in the city of North Bay. It was open when I was mayor of the city, and thank you for the $20 million that the municipality had to put in. She's the one who, oh, that's right, she closed 3 hospitals. That's right, I recall that now. So, Speaker, the
Order. Member for Nipissing.
lots of nerves are being struck on the other side. I know that the truth hurts, Speaker, I can tell. So when this Liberal government closed 60 beds in the city of North Bay last year, closed 60 beds.
I'll start warning you individually if it comes to that. Thank you. Member for Nipissing has the floor.
Thank you. So I'll repeat that because obviously it strikes a wonderful chord here. They closed 60 beds. I was in the hospital and the person who was in the room said to me, Vic, slide the curtain back and have a peek in there and see what that is. See what a closed bed looks like. I didn't know what a closed bed meant when they closed these beds. And sure enough, the room's empty. The bed's gone. It's folded up. It's in storage down in the basement, basically. All of the goodies in the wall, they're all gone. The phone's gone. The desks. Everything is out of there, Speaker. That's the reality. So when you have these 60 closed beds and you have 350 people who've been fired by the Liberal government and their mismanagement, their waste and their scandal, that tells you, Speaker, that there's uncertainty in the economy. There's uncertainty that's created. They can talk about jobs for today and tomorrow. They can talk about it all they want because it's aspirational. The operation, the reality is they're firing people. Every day, every single day, somebody else under this government is fired. So this is a government who claims one thing and does the other. We've seen that, and we've seen the hurt that that has put on the patients. Speaker, not only are there no plans for more long-term care beds or restoring funding for physician services and physiotherapy services for seniors, this budget makes medication more unaffordable for Ontario seniors. I'm going to talk about that in a second. Now, these are the seniors, the very seniors, who are already struggling to pay their outrageous and ever-increasing hydro bills. Seniors have already seen their physiotherapy services cut, cataract services cut, diabetes testing strips cut, and hydro rates that, as I've said earlier, makes them choose whether to heat or eat. And now this government is making the cost of medication more unaffordable, Speaker. For seniors, life is harder under the Liberals. If you are making $19,500 and you are a senior, your drugs, the cost of your drugs will be almost doubled in the province of Ontario. Speaker, $19,500 is the threshold. Beyond that, you are now being punished by this government for their waste, their mismanagement, and their scandals, because they're making life harder for seniors. And, of course, the government, the Liberals, have eliminated the Healthy Home Renovation Tax Credit, which helped seniors live independently and safely in their homes. Who in this government, Speaker, is looking out for Ontario's seniors? They are our most vulnerable, and they deserve better. They certainly deserve better than this government, Speaker. I want to talk briefly about the farmers all across the Ontario. I happened to have a luncheon on Saturday with the East Nipissing Parry Sound Farmers Symposium, and all the talk there was about the fact that OMAFRA budget, the Ministry of Agriculture budget, was reduced from $943 million to $916 million. They know also that the government is eliminating the local food fund. Again, Speaker, these are announcements the government made with great pronouncements and great photo opportunities and great fanfare. And then quietly, they cancel them all in the actual printed budget, cancelling the local food fund. In contrast to 6 other ministries, the Ministry of Agriculture, I call it OMAFRA, is not receiving any green investment fund initiatives as well, we heard. Speaker, the cap-and-trade gasoline tax of 4.3 cents a litre, this is particularly painful to the agricultural community, whether it's in any part of Ontario. Again, I was in the north, home in the north on the weekend, and talked to these farmers. We all had lunch together. By the way, it was our traditional sea pie that was for lunch, cooked by the farm community in Trout Creek. And there was nothing to cheer about at that luncheon. When they started talking about Kathleen Wynne and the Liberal government budget, there was nothing to cheer about. They were seniors, they have families, and they're farmers, Speaker, and they got the triple whammy. Speaker, I want to, as I begin to wind down in my last few minutes, I want to talk again a little bit about the North. Speaker, we are particularly hit this winter. You know, the weather, they're forecasting 90 centimeters of snow this week alone. You know, when I was home on the weekend, there was a tremendous amount of snow. I came back to Toronto, of course, yesterday, and it was 10 degrees, and there's not a snowflake to be seen anywhere. And it's a constant reminder, Speaker, that life in Northern Ontario is very different, very, very different than the life lived here in the GTA, especially in the winter. And so when we talk about 4.3 cents a litre in gas, Speaker, that we have long distances to travel from community to community. You know, in my riding alone, I know the members here on all sides that that have a more urban riding. You know, you can get in the 30th floor at the Hilton and look down and see somebody's entire riding. That's just the reality of it here in the GTA. At home, it takes me hours to get from one end of my riding to the other. So if I want to go to the Echoes restaurant in Powassan and meet with the community in the morning, talk about plans for a development that we're looking at downtown, and then I drive all the way over to Mattawa to talk about another development that we're working on. I mean, it's 20 minutes to get back to North Bay and another 45 minutes. Well, I should actually say it's about another hour to get there. These are long drives, Speaker. So when you have 4.3 cents a litre, that's quite serious to my friends in the North, my family. When you talk about home heating fuel, I mean, I heat with natural gas. Many of my friends and family where we live out in the country heat with natural gas until that ends, and then they heat with propane. This is particularly onerous to our families. There are many families right across Ontario who this hits, and hits hard. That's the reality of it. So when we hear or don't hear the minister present a budget on Thursday and never once, ever once, say the words Northern Ontario, that is so hurtful to the people that I serve at home. When I think of the families that are struggling, when I see the child tax credit cancelled, when I see the healthy home renovation tax credit cancelled, when I see the $107 million from the Lottery Corporation that used to go to the hospitals cancelled, when I see nothing other than a real slap in the face, Speaker, the $2 deduction of the hydro from the cap and trade. That's insulting, Speaker, to know that families are struggling. In our office, we hear day after day, week after week, of families who have come in and say, I've got the cutoff notice from hydro. I don't know what I'm going to do. This is the reality that people are living in. Life is expensive in Ontario under the Liberal government. And as of last Thursday, when we heard that budget, for those people who woke up in Ontario on Friday morning, now life got even more expensive and more difficult and harder in the province of Ontario. Speaker, this has to stop, because we know it's all a result. They can give you all the excuses in the world and bark back and forth with their smart comments, but at the end of the day, it's because of the Liberal waste, management, and scandals that have been exposed by the Auditor General, the Financial Accountability Officer, and the OPP. Thank you.
Thank you very much.